All right, I'd like to call the Village of Cottage Grove Village of Board of Trustees meeting to order. It is Monday, May 1st at 6:30 p.m. on my watch. We are holding this as a hybrid meeting, meaning that we have many people in the Village Hall. Those with stuffy noses are away virtually on Zoom, and there's a Zoom link at the top of the agenda, as well as an audio call-in number as well. So with that, we have a quorum. The agenda was properly posted, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next item then is public appearances. This is public's opportunity to speak to the board. If you are from the public, we just ask that you share your name, your address, your municipality, and hold your comments to no more than 3 minutes in case we have a number of people who would like to speak. With that, I'll pause and allow anybody in the room or on the Zoom to raise their hand and jump in. All right, then we'll move to discuss and consider our meeting minutes held from our regular board meeting on April 17th. The meeting minutes were attached in your packet. Any questions, comments, edits, or consideration for motion?
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
First by Heidi, seconded by David. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor then?
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. Next, then we shift right to new business. First up is discuss the pre-sale of $3 million general obligation corporate purpose bonds series for 2023A. I'm assuming Greg is in the room.
There's no Greg tonight. Harry Allen filling in for Greg Johnson, who you guys are more used to seeing. But just so everybody knows, at Ellers we have a backup for every client that we have, just so that there's always somebody there that can answer phone calls or is familiar with the client in case somebody's double booked like Greg is tonight. I can fill in, and I'm still knowledgeable in the village and what you all are doing. So I'm the backup for Cottage Grove. It's my first time being here, so it's a pleasure to meet everybody. Harry Allen with Ellers. So, in your packet was a about 10-page report. It's called the pre-sale report for the general obligation corporate purpose bonds that will be issued this year. So I'm gonna go through this. I'll go through each section and just give you a high level of what the section means, just so we all understand what the bonds are, what we're issuing tonight. So if we flip over to page 1, we can start there. At the top, this is just saying the par amount, which is the total amount being issued, is at $3,055,000, and they're general obligation corporate purpose bonds, which means they're payable from the general property tax of the village. Under purposes, whenever you issue bonds in Wisconsin, a bond is anything that's over 10-year repayment. So anytime you issue bonds, you have to issue it by enumerated purpose under statute. So that's why there are a bunch of different resolutions on the agenda tonight. Even though you're only doing one bond issue, it has to be broken down by those purposes. And so there's park purposes, there's 2 streets. That's because we amortize the equipment for the streets over a different length than the actual street improvements. And then there's water utility and sewer utility projects, which are that debt service is anticipated to be paid by the utility. So it's issued on a general obligation basis, but the intent is to abate some of that debt service with the utility revenues. Moving on to authority, this is their general obligation corporate purpose bonds. So that's statute 6704. The main thing I want to draw our attention to here is the debt limit. So all communities in Wisconsin are limited to the amount of general obligation debt that can be outstanding, and that's 5% of your TID-in equalized value. And when we look at that, the village is at 44% of its capacity with this debt issue. And that means there's around $30 million of debt that could be issued still after this issuance. Now, the village is rated, so we don't recommend issuing your entire capacity. The rating agencies tend to like you to stay 70% or under. So when we look at that, there's a more real capacity of around 14 million after this debt issue is taken on. So still plenty comfortable on that front. Moving on to the term and the call feature, these are bonds, so that means they can be issued up to 20 years. And in the pre-sale report, we have everything amortized over that full 20-year period based on level debt service. So we're trying to keep those payments the same for the whole 20-year period. When you issue debt, you can also put in what's known as a call feature. So let's say at some point down the road, the village has excess funds, or maybe there's some TID projects or something you're funding, whatever it might be, and you want to call that debt and save some of the interest cost, you can do that so long as you set it up front. And so right now we have, I think it's an 8-year call built in there. So 8 years down the road, if there's money, you can call that debt, pay it off 12 years early. So that's all that is in here. Moving on to the next section, this is bank qualification. This is something under tax exempt issuance. If you issue 10 million or less per year, you can deem your issue bank qualified, which means banks are more likely to bid on it since they get an incentive from the federal government for purchasing that debt. So if we can stay under that 10 million, it creates a bigger pool of potential bidders for the bonds and can potentially get a better interest rate. And so with this being the only issue that we're aware of for this year, they will be bank qualified, so hopefully there's a lot of interest on the day of sale. Rating, I mentioned earlier that the village is rated. They're rated by S&P, AA. We're going through the rating process right now to update that for this new issue. The spaces for recommendation section, it's really easy with general obligation bonds. There's only one way to sell them in Wisconsin. They have to be sold competitively. So given the size of the issue, it makes sense to go for that 20-year term. All the projects fit under that 6704 statute, and by that we have to sell competitively. So very straightforward here. Method of sale placement. That competitive sale, all that means is we put all the information out to the market through what's known as an official statement, and then we tell underwriters at this time on this day, submit your best price for the bonds and we'll take the lowest one. That's all that means. So moving on to premium pricing, that's a way that underwriters price the bonds. So on the day of sale, they might give you extra money than the face value of your bonds. We can treat that extra money 2 different ways. The first thing we're going to do is decrease the amount of debt being issued. We can only decrease it so much based on state statute. So any remaining amount after we decrease it will go into the debt service fund. And you can use that for up to the first 3 years to abate some of the interest that you would be paying. So it can have a nice upfront impact on what you have to levy for. Moving on to the review of existing debt. Anytime we issue new debt, we look to see if there are refunding opportunities for interest savings just based on what's outstanding already. At this point in time, there aren't any interest, no bonds outstanding that would see interest savings. All the debt that is callable is under 3% already, and right now we're in a market of 3.5%, 3.75%, so it doesn't make sense to include any of that in this issue. Looking at continuing disclosure, when you issue tax-exempt debt, you promise to put out certain information to the market for every year that that debt is outstanding. The village already has general obligation debt outstanding with continuing disclosure obligations. None of that will change with this issue. They will just continue to be subject to that continuing disclosure requirement. Arbitrage monitoring, there's not too much of a concern here, just based on the village is intending to spend the proceeds this year on projects being funded this year, but arbitrage is the idea that when you issue tax-exempt debt, you're issuing it at a lower interest rate than you would if it was taxable. And so if you then take that money and you reinvest it somewhere else at a higher rate than what you're paying on your debt, the IRS doesn't like that. And so they'll want some of that back. But given the spend down, there's not much of a concern here with the arbitrage. This next part is investment of bond proceeds. So as I just mentioned, you can take these proceeds, you can invest it in a fund until you spend it on projects. And I don't know what the village's current practice is, but a lot of places will just plug it into LGIP until it's time to spend it. That's sitting around 4.5%. So you can make a little bit of money while you're waiting to pay for project bills. This risk factor section, this gets to the utility debt that's being supported or being issued under the general obligation. The intent is to abate that debt with utility revenues, but that's subject to those utility revenues actually being there. There's a schedule later on in the pre-sale we'll get to that shows those revenues are there and they're there in a really healthy amount. So no concern on that front. This last section, the other service providers, this is just looking at who are all the players. So there's Bond Counsel, which is Quarles and Brady. And then there's a paying agent. So this is a nifty service that they will send the village an invoice for how much needs to be paid on the debt. And the village pays the paying agent, which then takes care of everything with DTC, who's kind of the clearinghouse for all the bond payments. And then this last one is a rating agency, which is S&P Global. And flip over to page 5. This is looking at the debt issuance schedule. So here we are, May 1st, with a pre-sale review by you all. And then the week of May 22nd, we're going through that rating update with S&P. And we're having what's known as a due diligence call at that point, too, to review all the information that's being put out on the market, making sure it's as accurate as it can be. May 26th is when we distribute all that information to the market. And then on June 5th, either I or Greg will be back here to present hopefully really good sale results to you all. And on June 22nd, that's when closing will occur. That means all the bond proceeds will be received by the village. Flipping forward to lots of tiny numbers, they might even get smaller as we go along. But starting with table 1, the main thing I want to pay attention to here is that net tax levy, which is about 2/3 of the way over to the right. That's taking all of your general obligation debt that's paid every year, and then considering all of the different abatement sources. So whether that's tax increment revenues, whether it's utility revenues, whatever revenues exist that are taking some of that burden off the property tax, we take all those out and get us to our net tax levy. So that's what you're actually levying the property taxpayers for. In 2023, that was around 1.1 million, and we're showing that go up just a little bit next year and about 80,000 the next year, and then starting to drop back down from there. So that's where we are today before we issue any debt. Moving on to table 2, and feel free to stop me at any point if you do have questions. This is looking at what are we funding with this debt issue. So we took the capital improvement plan and we built everything in here so you can see back in park, hope I said that right, road and sidewalk, there's some plow trucks and some pickup trucks that are being funded as well. And those equipment portions are split based on how they'll be used. So they'll be used for water, sewer, and streets, and we broke it up accordingly based on how they'll be used. Moving on to table 3. So we're funding around $3 million worth of projects, but when you issue debt, there are certain costs involved with issuing that debt. So when we add in those costs, you're looking to that $3,055,000.
Harry, I do have a quick question.
Yeah.
So I hear the Fed's going to bump the interest rate another quarter point between now and the sale. Do you foresee that impacting this table 3 at all?
Table 3 probably won't change too much.
Okay.
Since this is the total amount being issued. The interest rate will play in here on actually table 4, so it's a great lead in. Right now we have everything, all the numbers are modeled at 3.8%. And recent sales, we've seen around 3.5%. We've had 2 recent sales in the past couple weeks over 3.47% for a 20-year general obligation bond of a similar size. So that quarter point doesn't always translate into a quarter point for the tax exempt market. We've actually seen really competitive pricing in the tax exempt market all year. It might bump it up a little bit, but probably not the full quarter point.
Thanks.
Yep. So looking through table 4, we take everything here and break it up by the enumerated purpose. So starting with the parks, that's over the 20 years. Streets, over 20 years, except for the pickup truck and plow portion, that's over the 5 years, because that equipment doesn't last the full 20 years, so you don't want to pay for it for 20 years. Then we can flip to the second, table 4, which is looking at the water and the sewer, again, the same equipment. This is a portion that's going to be picked up by the utility. So the water portion by the water, sewer by the sewer. And then in total, with the principal and the interest, it's looking around 4.2 million in total cost over the 20 years. This could change depending on how that interest rate shakes out on the day of sale. Moving on to table 5. This is taking that table 1 with that existing 1.1 million net debt service levy and plugging in the new debt at this point. And then we abate the water and the sewer and get to what your new net debt service levy is. So looking in 2024, we're showing that at 1.36 million. So around a $250,000 jump from today, which translates to around 30 cents for the tax rate, with some conservative growth in the value of the village. We took the 5-year history and discounted that by 25% to grow that value year over year. So you can get a better idea of what that tax rate might shake out at. Yeah.
Quick question. When we look at that table, I think I've asked this question before, but I don't remember the answer. The tax rate, so if we look at 2024
Yep.
to 2025, the total net debt service levy goes up, but the annual taxes per the $100,000 home goes down?
Yeah, that's a great question. This has to do with the closure of TID 7. So that it's going to add a lot back onto the property tax roll, which is going to have a significant impact on that tax rate. Yep.
And it's also assuming no other new debt is issued the following year.
Yep.
So just the context there on, I know this is referencing per $100,000 of assessed value, but looking the increase of the impact essentially from this debt issuance from this year to next year is about $100 on a $300,000 home, and then the following year, you know, if there aren't any other issuances, that would be reduced the following year by $60. So over 2 years, about a $40 impact on a $300,000 property. Just for some context on how this issuance impacts everybody.
Yeah.
We had recently extended the TID collection for housing
Yep.
projects, and is that factored in then to these numbers?
Yeah, so we bumped that TID closure out 1 additional year under this scenario.
Sure.
So that won't hit the levy next year, but the
Right,
following year. it will.
Following. Okay,
Yep.
great, thank you.
Of course. So we can chug along to table 6. This is looking at the debt capacity of the village. So as I mentioned earlier, 44%, that's where you'll be at the end of this year. And then with no new debt being issued under these schedules, you can see that drops off every year. Realistically, the village will issue more debt, so that 44% number is an important one to look at here. Then moving on to table 7, this is looking at the water and the sewer's ability to pick up additional debt. And what you want to see is that debt coverage, which is to the far right of both the water and the sewer headers. You want that number to be above 1. That means you have enough money to pay the debt service. Water is 1.11, and it gets better year over year. And sewer is 1.7, and it stays about that for the first couple of years and steps up after 5 or 6 years. So plenty of money in the utilities to pay for the small amount of debt that's being issued through them. And then this last graph is looking at where have tax exempt rates been for the last 10 years. You can see it's kind of been a wild ride over the last 2 years, and it looks really scary because it goes vertical. But if we look on the 10-year average, we're right on. That 10-year average is 3.4%, and we've been seeing things price at that 3.5% level. So hopefully we're still in that environment when we issue debt here in about a month.
Question, Harry, for AA rated communities, do we tend to hit around market for that or below?
Yeah, you'll price pretty well. So looking at a recent sale between a AA community and a single A community, it was a pretty big difference between them. So the single A was 3.74, double A was 3.47. So that's a significant savings that you're getting by having that higher rating.
Could you talk about service, kind of where the sweet spot has been for the last, say, 5 to 7 years? Has it been in that like $1.50 range? Or
Go
ahead.
Okay. Yeah, most communities are $1.50 to $2.50, somewhere in that range. A lot of the focus is on a levy versus what's your debt limit and how much of your debt limit are you using. Certain communities are more concerned with tax rate. It kind of depends on the community as to what the focus is when it comes to issuing debt. But that tax rate, it's about right on for most communities. So not seeing any more questions. The rest, well, the next, I think, 5 items are all related to the bonds, and it's just due to that enumerated purpose. So they have to be approved for each purpose, and then for the bonds in totality. That's just why there's so many things to pass here. Does anybody have any more questions for me?
No, but I'll start making the motions if folks are ready for that. I'll bring
Thank
that.
you, everyone.
Thank you. All right, well, I would like to make a motion that we approve the initial resolution authorizing $2.345 million general obligation bonds for parks and public grounds projects.
Second.
How do you? Sorry, John, we couldn't hear you.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. We have a motion by Sarah and a second by David. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor then?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries.
All right, I'll make a motion that we approve $600,000 general obligation bonds for street improvement projects.
Second.
All right, we have a motion from Sarah and a second from David. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor then?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries.
All right, I'll make a motion authorizing $55,000 general obligation bond for water system projects.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Sarah, second by David. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor then?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries.
And I'll make a motion that we authorize $55,000 general obligation bonds for sewerage projects.
Second.
Motion by Sarah, second by David. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor then?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries.
And finally, I'll make a motion that we approve the sale of not to exceed $3,055,000 general obligation corporate purpose bonds, Series 2023A.
Second.
Motion by Sarah, second by David. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor then?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. All right. Next, then we move to discuss appointment of successor agent for Dollar General. So this is Lisa.
Yep, the application was in the packet. It's typical when they have a new agent for an establishment, they need to get approval. So that's what this is about.
Any questions from board members?
I'm just wondering why it isn't filled out completely in section 1. Licensee name, reason for cancellation of appointed agent, or is that not necessary?
We probably can fill that in. I'm just happy that they did the form. Understood. Personally.
I'll make a motion to approve the appointment of a successor agent for Dollar General as written.
Second.
Motion by David, second by Sarah. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor then? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. Next then, discuss and consider Arbor Day proclamation. Probably Sean?
Oh, excuse me. Yes, once again, it is getting to be that time, so we're just looking for an Arbor Day proclamation again. This helps us with our Tree City USA grants, and yeah, just like to move forward.
Any questions for Sean?
Is the proclamation, it references Nebraska? Is that in 1872? Okay, thanks. I just wasn't sure what, if, oh, okay. But, and then the second one too. Okay. All right. Nebraska it is. That's where it started. Okay. Well, I have my mic on. I guess I might as well make the motion to approve the Arbor Day proclamation as presented in the packet.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion?
I just have a question because we're recognizing April 28th, 2023, so it's Arbor Day was last month. Is that it? Okay, just making sure. Oh, okay. I didn't know if it was a typo or not, so just wanted to make sure. Thanks.
No, we did proceed with all of our Arbor Day plans.
Any other discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor then?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. Next, then we move to discuss and consider a block party application for Maggie Walker. I think the only question is, are we invited?
They got the right number of signatures? Yep, okay, perfect. I would make a motion to approve the block party application for Maggie Walker.
Second.
All right, motion by Heidi, seconded by David. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor then?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. Sorry for my voice, guys. Next, then we move to reports from village boards, commissions, and committees, starting with the library board. David.
Thank you, Jen. Library Board met on Wednesday, April 19th. We discussed and considered the facilities subcommittee organization, and then we talked through the background check policy. Tracy then gave a programming report. We paid the bills. We got a committee report from the facilities subcommittee, and then talked about FGM, where FGM is at, and kind of an update there. Cindy gave a library board president's report, talked about some of the grants and some of the donations we've gotten. There was a friends report, and then our next meeting is Thursday, May 18th. And that was it.
Any questions for David? All right, thanks, David. Next, then we'll move to Deer Grove EMS Commission. I'll take a swing at this, and then Brittany can jump in. I see Chief is on here as well. We met on, April 20th. Went through the usual items, nothing too big there. Did talk about looking at doing some door key fobs within the two facilities. So there's more to dig into there. Again, it makes it easier for when staff come and go, rather than what we have now is the push pads. So Chief's going to continue looking into that, but it was supported by the commission, certainly. Then we had a presentation by Johnson Block. They walked through the draft 2022 financial statements. All look good there. Just one minor finding, which is typical for small organizations, just the separation of duties is always a challenge with that. So, but nothing to note there. All look good. Had initial discussion for the replacement of ambulance M80, just because of the sheer length of time it takes to get an ambulance. We just got a new one this year, and already it's like about a 2-year process from what Chief walked through for us. So there's more to come on that. Had a closed session and then wrapped it up. Nothing on a closed session. Chief or Brittany, did I miss anything?
I think you're good.
Yeah, I think you turned off. And the door thing would just be as you described, to upgrade current handles and locks combinations and whatnot to be more proactive with building security.
Yep. Great. All right. Thank you both. Then we'll move to the Deer Grove Fire District Commission. David, Vince, Chris.
Well, me, I guess. Cottage Grove Fire District Commission met on Monday, April 24th. We approved the minutes, and then Chief came and talked about the roof repair. So for those that don't know, there's kind of two roofs on the emergency services building. The lower roof, or kind of the shorter, I guess you'd want to say, if you're looking at the front of the building, it'd be the right. That lower roof has a leak, and actually in the crew quarters, leaking right onto somebody's forehead, apparently, in bed. So we had a scope of work created from Great Lakes Roofing, and we have ultimately approved the work to repair the roof. It's about $1,200 to $1,800. There is conversation about eventually that entire lower roof section, and probably the upper roof as well, will have to be replaced at some point. It's a 30-year roof, and that building was built in 1996. So as you can imagine, we're getting towards the useful life of that roof. So more to come there, probably next year than anything. From there, Chief gave his report. It's in our packet here, and then we talked about future agenda items. A couple of note: discuss electric vehicle fires and possible equipment needs. Discuss solar panel fires and possible equipment needs, and then talking about tender one. So, and we'll hold officer elections too at the next meeting. So, did I miss anything? I think that was pretty much it. So,
David, if I could add about the roof.
Yeah.
It didn't actually leak on anybody in specific, but it did leak on a smoke detector.
Oh.
That's how we discovered it. It was set off a trouble alarm. We did get a scope of work that I neglected to include to Nick for that meeting, but it was $60,000 for that replacement of that lower roof.
Yep.
So that can give the board a bit of perspective as the difference between a repair and a replace.
Definitely, we did kind of have a side conversation to that scope of work that Eric kind of mentioned. There's $40,000 in the annual budget for repairs, and And because of the new agreement, as long as, whatever the estimate is, as long as it fits within, in the budget, the commission itself can approve it. And again, that was way over the budget, and again, there's gonna be more conversation around, what to do long-term with the building in terms of when and how to fix it, along with all the other capital costs needed for fire and EMS. So, we just kind of put it
Yeah,
on the back burner.
I was a bit shocked by that number, honestly, having gotten the quote years ago for the original process that you're working through. I anticipated it to hopefully be within the money that you had set aside for roof repair and not be almost double what that, but that's the kind of the trend of all those things in the trades, is that everything is increasing drastically in price.
Makes me think about quitting my day job.
Can't afford it. And that's one of the reasons, obviously, why the two communities are putting away funds each year in order to take care of things like that, as well as, you know, I think the last big one was the parking lot. It's just the way that, you know, the age of the building, you know, keep things running, particularly because we do have our emergency services folks in there at all times, so it's important. All right, with that, then we'll move down to the Law Enforcement Committee. And again, I'll start, and then Sarah, Chris, you can jump in, or Chief. We met on April 25th, covered the normal items, talked about the body-worn cameras, continue to move forward with that, looking at hopefully a switch over around June 1st. Talked a little bit about mutual aid and just the, you know, the back that's going on there, and just looked at a little more data. Then Chief went through the annual report, as well as discussed potential purchase of a radio. And again, that's depending on when we actually hire this next round of officers, how many we get. We may actually need at some point need another radio to outfit that last officer, but Chief's holding off on that until we actually have a better idea of when that will be. Really cool event that's coming up, or maybe already happened. My brain's a little fuzzy, but the teddy bear sleepover, had immediate sign up for that. I think 20 families did, and that's where the kids come in and they get to tour the facility, the police area, and then tuck their teddy bears in at night, and then come and pick them up the next day. And as Chief said, that there might be some teddy bears that get into mischief overnight, so there might be some camera shots of that. Then there was a discussion about the oxygen in the squads. This is based on feedback we got from Chief Lang, and that oxygen is actually considered a medicine. So we have to evaluate that, because obviously our officers are trained in a lot of different things, but not certified to deliver medicine. So Chiefs continue looking at that right now. Then I had the normal reports. Staff is all busy. Anything else, Chris or Sarah or Chief, that I missed?
Nope, we're good, John, thanks.
All right. Then we'll slide down to Parks, Rec, and Forestry and Sustainability, and we have a few discuss and consider. So I will turn that over to Heidi.
Thanks, John. So we met last week on the 27th, and we had a visit from the new organizer of the Badger Challenge, which is formerly the Ride. And they've previously used Community Park as a rest stop for their ride in the fall. So that will be on September 24th, 2023. And so there's a similar, they'll come down Wheeled Bridge and stop in front of Community Park. I'm not sure if Andrea joined us. I think I see her on tonight.
Yes, I am here. If there's any questions, I can answer.
And John gets his front row seats to to watch the bicyclists go by. And I guess Chris can cover the other side of the street. There'll be, yeah, medical and repair tent and porta potty facilities that'll be there then, probably dropped off Friday, picked up Monday. And it's the bicyclists that are in the 100K and the Century, is that right?
Yes, so just the 100K and 100-mile riders will be coming through that area.
Looking for, I guess, questions, of course, and then it is discuss and consider in front of us tonight.
I guess Heidi or Sean, the only question I have is, do we have any competing events at Bakken that day?
No, we do not.
All right, wonderful. Then they will get the park to themselves.
I'll make a motion to approve the Badger Challenge, formerly the Ride, using Community Park as a rest stop on September 24th, 2023.
Second.
All right, motion second. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor then?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries.
Thanks for joining us, Andrea. Good luck with the race
Absolutely,
planning.
thank you all. Bye.
So then I'll skip this item for now because we might have someone from Home Talent joining us tonight too, so I want to get them in. So the way the field is at Fireman's, you kind of get direct sunlight in the summer at the time the Home Talent plays at night. And so they would like to start their games listed in the memo email a little bit later, which would push them past the park hours at Fireman's Park. So they're looking for us to extend the park hours so they can play a little bit later. I don't know, Sean, if you had anything to add?
Yep, Pat Hawker from Home Talent is on the call. If anybody has any questions for him. They're looking to, I believe, start their games at 8 p.m. As Heidi mentioned. With the sunset, it's home plate, batters looking directly into the sun, so they'd like to start after sunset. I did speak with Charlie Rogers, who's a neighbor of the park and a steward of the park, takes good care of things for us over there. He did not, although he wasn't overly impressed with the park being open that late, he did not have any general concerns other than he was hoping that if they didn't need to be there that late, that they would shut the lights off and get out as soon as they could. One thing Charlie mentioned too was he had asked that if concession sales could end prior to the 8th inning, but Pat, you can jump in here. I don't believe that they sell concessions on Thursday night games, so the concession stand wouldn't be open. Pat, go ahead.
Yep, that's correct. Yep, that's correct. These games are dates that we're requesting. We do not have concession sales at all during those evenings. As stated earlier, we're just looking to extend our start time to 8. We have considered starting earlier, however, with travel arrangements from other teams that we do play and work schedules, that couldn't be accommodated or it wouldn't work for our team or other teams, opposing teams. So hence the 8 o'clock start. And as soon as we can clean up and lock up, we will have the lights off before they requested. I believe it's 11:30 we're requesting to extend the park hours for those dates that are listed in the email attached in the minutes.
So the Parks Committee, I thought 11 seemed like a little bit, I don't know, more reasonable to neighbors. But the original request was 11:30. I guess, Pat, did you have anything to add on the timing?
No, that's definitely open. Just looking to extend it from the current park times, which is 10 p.m. So 11 would be more than willing or more accommodating to kind of our schedule. I mean, it all depends on the time of how the pace of the game and they're roughly 2.5 hours. But you also, extra innings and things like that we can't really end on a tie too. So just kind of considering that. So 11 o'clock would be more than accommodating for us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just ask, what happens on a night that 11 o'clock strikes and they're not done cleaning up yet? We're not sending the police squads out to find them or anything, right?
If there was a complaint.
If there
yeah.
was a complaint, then
Yes.
yes.
Chief?
We'd probably work with them to expedite their vacating of the park.
Yeah,
We'd try not to address it with a citation right away.
yeah. I guess I just wonder if it would be helpful to give until 11:30 with the goal of having it, folks be done by 11? I don't know what others think. I'm in bed by 9, so I don't, it doesn't bother me.
Well, it's still 3 hours, so I think that's the other thing. Even if they start at 8.
Pat, are those 7-inning games or 9-inning games?
7-inning games. And just to add to that, I mean, the sunset isn't completely blocked anymore with the renovations down at Fireman's Park area. That all the trees are cleared. So any luck that we had in the past are now gone. And so it's going to make it a little challenging with what we have now. So like we could play at 8 o'clock, but with the trees gone, we might have a quote-unquote sun delay for 20 minutes during game time. So just another consideration to go to the 11:30 if possible. But again, 11 o'clock is still accommodating to where it's at now. So.
So, yeah, you had the Parks Committee recommendation there, or 11:30. I guess we do need the official motion to keep the park hours open.
I'll make a motion that we, I'm just looking for the notes, approve extending park hours at Fireman's Park for home talent night games to 11:30 for the dates that are listed in Pat Hawker's email.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second then. Any further discussion?
We'd have, actually, I don't know if you want to lock down those dates, because I guess I would look at what if they have a rain delay or anything like that. That would require them to come back to the board if they had to reschedule a game.
Mm-hmm.
So you may consider just doing a time period. Obviously, Mr. Hawker could definitely speak to that further if that helps them out.
Could it be,
Yeah,
oh, go ahead, sorry.
Pat,
Oh, go ahead.
Pat,
Go ahead.
question, how late would you, like into the month of August, would you be rescheduling these games?
We try to wrap up these games by the end of July. If we had to go into a date or two into August, it would be like the first week. The playoffs for that start the first week in August, and then it would go into Labor Day if we were to keep winning, and you keep winning, you keep playing. So like worst case scenario would be to Labor Day that we could be playing at Fireman's Park. But these are only the dates known at this point. So to the point that was stated there, that there's a lot of what ifs or moving things around that were just unknown. We just have the dates that were specified of what we know now or today.
Could we have the motion suggest it be weeknight, because these look like all weeknights, so weeknights that the home talent baseball team plays? Would that cover? Because I don't want it open till 11:30 every night.
Right.
Does that,
Yeah, if they're not there.
if they're not there, then it's closed, yeah, so, and these are all weeknights, is that accurate, not weekends?
Correct. Yeah, our weekends are on during at 1 p.m. or we'll make it during the day as much as we can.
Okay, so Lisa, did you get the amendment? Okay. Thanks.
I still second the motion.
All right, any other discussion? Having heard none then, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries.
Thanks, Pat, and hope you have a good season.
Great, thank you very much for your time.
So the next thing we have tonight that we talked about at the committee was utilizing $5,200 of park development funds to prepare a new map rendering of Bakken Park, because the one we have with the splash pad is old, and we have a lot of new cool things coming. So we want to make sure to be able to show community and visitors accurate rendering of Bakken Park, and then to start the conceptual design of the Shady Grove Park, since Shady Grove's starting to fill in, and we want to have something ready for when that park's ready. So that's, from Park Development Fund. And there's some information in the packet that Strand put together on the breakdown of that. Anything you want to add, Sean, or I'm not sure if...
Nope, I think you hit it. For the most part, I am getting phone calls from residents as they buy lots and move in there, just wondering what's going on. Actually, I got one over the weekend that they had heard a rumor that the village sold parkland back to the developer. So it's interesting what we hear out there. But so yeah, the intention is to get the residents involved in the design. It's a small park, half acre, but probably not a zip line there. But
I'll make a motion to approve $5,200 from Park Development Fund to prepare a new map rendering of Bakken Park and a conceptual design of Shady Grove Park.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second then. All those, any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor then?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries.
We did have a few other
Anything else?
things, that we talked about. So there's a Bakken Park agreement with the rugby about parking and park use and shelter reservations, just so we can all be on the same page of expectations on both ends. So there were a couple edits that the committee requested for that, so that'll be coming back then again through committee and then up to the board next month. Well, I guess this month. And then it'll be back here in June. We also talked about the project updates, and now that we have spring here, things are starting to move along. The Wheels Park, people are on site, which is very exciting, and we also have dirt moving for the other Bakken Park updates. And anything going on at Community or Red Hawk?
not yet.
Not yet, okay.
Soon.
All right, thanks, Sean. Otherwise, we have some great programming success. We've had some challenges hiring staff for the summer, so if you know anyone that is looking for a summer job in our wonderful Parks and Recreation Department, we could use help. Do you have anything else to add, Sean?
Nope.
Okay, unless there's questions.
Yeah, I did have a question.
Mhm.
I did notice in a little bit of inception, I'm looking through the agenda about the Bakken Park agreement, and it looks like Stafford had a memo about a shuttle service. Can you, what would the shuttle service be needed for?
For events where they have way too many cars, and that we would want them to provide a shuttle for the attendees instead of parking everywhere. There would be a designated off-site parking. Is that the intent that I'm?
Yeah, the intent
Colin?
is to just start thinking outside the box for when we get too many people at the park and there isn't enough parking there. So we've offered up, Chief and I have met with them, and we've offered up using Progress Drive as a possible area to park, and then possibly looking towards maybe talking to the school district about using, say, Cottage Grove School, and then being able to shuttle folks from said parking area to their facility, or to their location.
Makes sense.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, there's a couple other good things in the agreement. They utilize emergency services, so offsetting the costs of having those available here, readily available for injuries in rugby. So, yeah, there's some good conversation going on between rugby and the village to make sure everything runs smoothly. Otherwise, we'll meet again on May 25th, which is also the first night of Music in the Grove. So put that on your calendar.
A little bit of a prequel to upcoming community events. Thank you, Heidi.
Yep.
Then we move down to reports from village officers, village attorney. Larry, anything?
Nothing today.
All right, thanks, Larry. I have a few nominations here. It is that time of the year in which we have a number of folks' terms that have graciously served on a number of committees. Many of them happy to continue. Some new folks as well. So they're all there. I don't know if we want to take them in bulk. That's what we've done in the past, but I'll leave that up to the board members.
Actually, just had a quick question for Larry. Is there any issue with having one person on both the Planning Commission and the Zoning Board of Appeals?
Not that I'm aware of, but I'll take a look and make sure. I don't think there's any issue though.
Well, I'll make a motion that we approve the nominations from the village president as listed on the agenda, pending our attorney's review of the Board of Appeals for Zoning and Plan Commission.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and second then. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor then?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. That was pretty interesting, at least the view I got.
I saw it too. It was like a 1980s zoom out where it was like.
That's the way my head feels right about now. Anyway, that's pretty cool.
John, if I
Don't
can
watch
jump in,
that.
this is Larry. I actually misunderstood which I was thinking it was the Board of Review because we were just talking about that. I actually do think there'll probably be an issue with appointing someone to both the Plan Commission and the Zoning Board of Appeals. But again, we'll take a look at that.
All right, thanks, Larry. If that's the case, then we'll probably slap that person out from appeals because it doesn't meet that often, if that's the case. Then we move over to Lisa, spring election debriefing.
All right, you had quite a lengthy memo in the packet. I just wanted to bring everybody's attention to what occurred on election day due to the weather events that we had happen with an extremely busy turnout for a spring election. That's not typically what we see. So it gave us a little bit of challenges, and I just want to thank the PD, Public Works, JJ, for legal, for all working through it with me on that day. As the memo says, we were in contact with Dane County constantly, and thankfully the storm kept getting bumped back. And all ended well, other than what we learned on that day, which is what's laid out into the memo for the packet. So staff will be working on looking at these areas and seeing how we can be prepared better for the future. Because it seems the last two elections, we've had some excitement here in Dane County. One with what happened in Brooklyn, so that put us all on alert to look at our plans and kind of think through those a little bit better. And then with the weather, and really with this building, my concerns that day was because of the turnout, we had quite a few people here at any given time. And as you all are aware, we only have limited space here. And when you look at this space and the threat of a tornado of where we would shelter these people in place became quite a challenge. So I just challenge you all to think about that as we move forward, thinking about facilities, because this really is not adequate when it comes to those types of situations and the volume of people that we have at the polls on election day. And our data, I've been keeping track of our voter turnout since I started, and we do have voters here in Cottage Grove, which is amazing. So just planning and thinking of those things as we move forward. And don't be alarmed when you see possible budget memos coming through of things that we will need, and small thing, I mean, I don't know what the cost will be, but for example, the emergency lighting, if you look up, there's, one in this room. That wouldn't have been adequate to light this room if we were to stay in this place to conduct voting. So any questions? I think it's pretty laid out of what's in the memo. As always, if you do, you can always reach out, but just wanted to be aware of what happened on that day. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Lisa. Next, then we move to communications and miscellaneous business, starting with the consideration of approval of vouchers. Any questions, comments regarding the vouchers I presented?
I had a question about the Alpha Graphics line item, just as letter. That was the portion of it, anyway, the assistance they had getting that letter out to all of our residents. Yeah, John's letter. John's letter, yep. With that, I'll move to approve the bills as written.
I'll second.
All right, motion seconded then. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. All right, I freak out and make duplicates of myself there for a second. All right, correspondence. I didn't have any, but I move that up to the floor. Anybody else had any? And we'll move to upcoming community events. Heidi already referenced Music in the Grove on I think, the 25th. Anything else from anyone else?
I don't know if it's a community event, but there's a blood donation at Flynn Hall next Monday from 1 to 6.
Thank you, Chris. That's put on by the Lions, and it's always great when people donate. Anything else? All right, future agenda items. Matt, Aaron, anything? We'll certainly have planning commission items, perhaps.
I mean, we're working on, we should have a draft for the board to review regarding our recommendations for a new prioritization process regarding capital projects. So, yes, that should be ready for the next meeting.
All right, thanks, Matt. Then if there isn't anything else, I will make the motion that we go into closed session. This closed session is regarding the potential land acquisition in TID number 9 and establishing negotiation position. The Village of Cottage Grove Board will enter a closed session pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute 19.85(1) deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business wherever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, David. Roll call, Lisa, please.
Here. Ballwood.
Aye.
No
I
debate.
mean,
Recording in progress.
Chris.
All right, we've reconvened to open session. There's nothing to consider from closed session items. Item 12.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Look at me.
Sarah?
So anybody gets ahead of this.
Yeah. Not debatable. All those in favor?
Bye.
Aye. We are done. Thank you, everybody. Have a good week.
Hope you feel better, John.
Thank you, John.